Where once were contenders, now are befrienders. Let's celebrate lasses, celebrate lasses, celebrate lasses.
Finding a good bard main isn't easy for a number of reasons. The bard was the first of the expansion character classes in Dark and Darker, and well, when it was released, it's safe to say it wasn't exactly meta. But there were a few stalwart and faithful gamers who saw the potential future of the bard and dedicated their raid time to what is now one of the arguably highest skill cap classes in the game. And one of the community's veritable champions of the bard class is SwornRandom. Random is a veteran gamer, creator, and Dark and Darker bard master. When the Bard EA updates dropped, he released one of the best and most comprehensive bard guides, which at the time of this recording has amassed over 60,000 views. He's undoubtedly one of the most knowledgeable bard players out there and a joy to have in the Dark and Darker community. We had a chance to sit down for a campfire chat, and I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. And we are live.
Yes, sir.
Hello, everybody. Mr. Random, the Sworn Random,
Yes, sir.
is joining us today for Player Profiles, episode 11.
Happy
Welcome
to be
to the
here.
program, sir.
Yes, sir.
It is an exciting day. We have a ton of stuff to talk about.
Oh,
For those of
man.
you that are watching this at a later time, today's date is August 5th. It is 9:30-ish p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and hotfix number 15 or 16? Shoot, I think it's 15.
15, yeah. October, by the way. You said August.
Oh, shit, did I?
Yeah, you're going back to early access release.
Yeah, I just rewound time. Yeah.
as a bard main, I wish I was back there too.
It's a new spell, and I'm just using it in real life. Yes, it is October 5th. Hotfix 15 just came out, and the loot is bonkers in the chests. Seems like everywhere, but
absolutely.
we will get back to that later. For now, we want to kick off the program with the segment that I always have the most fun with in each and every program, which is how you got into streaming, how you got into gaming. Before we even talk Dark and Darker, we want to know more about you as a player. Real quick, before we do that, for those of you that are not familiar with SwornRandom, he is one of the best bards in the game. I've had a chance to run a few raids with him. I've watched several of his videos, and one particular bard video that he put out after the release of the game. So after we went from kind of skimpy, half-baked bard in playtest 5 to bard on release, he did one of the best videos I ever watched on how to build and play your bard. So Mr. Random is one of the best out there. Super chill guy and cool guy to play with.
Sir, it was crazy. Even just like 2-3 days after I posted that, so many things changed. Like it was like so immediate. Like I posted that, I was feeling good about it, and then like 2 days later, I was in Bard general chat in the Discord, and people were like, "Hey, by the way, this works like this," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, and by the way, this works like this," and then nerfs came, and I was like, "Okay."
That is one of the caveats to being a content creator for a game that's in early access or while it's in playtest. Your content typically does not age very well. And in this game, it could age for like 2 days, 3 days before it's completely different.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, so we'll come back to Dark and Darker. Tell us about how you started streaming, what games you were into early in your streaming career and whatnot.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been like pretty invested in like content, like the content space, watching it, and then like knowing that I wanted to do it for a pretty long time. I've been watching it since probably 2012-ish. I'm 23. My age changes with the years. So 2012, I was 12, January 3rd, 2000. So when I was 12 in 2012 is probably when I first like started really watching content. And I want to say that was like zombies stuff. It was like Syndicate Project. Yeah, Relaxing End, that kind of stuff was like my initial little, journey into YouTube. By 2014, I knew I wanted to make content. Like I knew I wanted to make YouTube videos, and it's kind of just been a journey from that point to now, like just kind of learning and, watching people in the space and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. For the longest time, it's been like trying to find a game. Like that was so hard for me. It was
Mhm.
such a journey for me. There's a lot of unlisted stuff back on my channel. I think that's like, oops, my mic. It's just like not there anymore
Mhm.
because it was like I've only had a PC for like 2 years. So originally my content was coming from my PlayStation. I was like streaming from the PlayStation, or I'd like stream it and then like unlist it and then I'd try to like find something to edit it on.
Mhm.
And it was really just like I had all this knowledge and I'd been like on YouTube stuff and I was like watching, these guys and I wanted to do this stuff and I like couldn't do it. Like I didn't have like the resources readily available to do it. And I finally got a PC right around the release of Elden Ring, I think. And that
Well,
was
that's not a
kind of my
bad time to get
first,
one. Yeah.
yeah, that was like my first real jump into content when I was like, okay, let's sit down and actually kind of apply some of the stuff I've learned over the years from like watching. But I would say like I first knew I wanted to make content when I was like 14 years old,
Wow.
probably about 14, freshman in high school, watching Mr. Waffle Waffles, Noah J, and like the zombies guys, like a lot of the zombies content creators was like my
Right.
first initial jump into it. Yeah. And Elden Ring was like my first real success.
Mhm.
I think my first Elden Ring video was like this little cheese, like how to cheese a boss, and it had like 100K, I think, and that like
Dang.
sparked I'd kind of told myself, forever, like, oh yeah, I just want to make videos, like I don't really care about the numbers, and like I don't care if I get views, and then I got views, and I was like, I care now, like I actually want to see those numbers go up. It was like really really exciting for me, but I fell into that trap of, I was making videos on a game and it got to the point where like I wasn't enjoying the game anymore
Right.
and I was just playing it to make videos and it
Yep.
was like 30 days before I got burned out. Like, it was like 30 days. And like those videos were doing well and I was doing really well and I was growing so fast, but I just wasn't having fun anymore. And I know a
I
lot of
could see
creators
that.
hit that point. Yeah, I know a
Yeah.
lot of creators hit that point like really early and I hit it and I never thought I would because like I said, I'd been telling myself I was gonna make content since I was 14, it'd been like 6 years of like, oh yeah, I'm ready. Like I'm ready. I just need the game and I just need the computer and like I'm ready to do this. And then 30 days into it, I was like, I was like, oh my gosh, like
Yep.
I'm just done, I'm done. So I kind of like had to take a step back after that and was like, is this really what I want to do? Like, do I really want to keep pushing into this? Because like I'm a busy person, full-time college student, full-time worker. I work for my college. So
Okay.
the hours I have, like at the end of the day, have to go to something productive, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
and I and I was really struggling with like do those hours to be put into content. So I from there, I talked to my roommate and my best friend. We've been friends for about 10 years now. And he was like, because we were making videos together, and I was like, "Do you still want to make videos? Like, how are you?" And he was like, "Absolutely." So I was like, "Okay, let's keep doing this." So then, sometime around there or after there, because I think Elden Ring came out in like March
That
ish, and I made video,
sounds right.
yeah,
Yeah.
ish, like or like spring, and I made videos through probably the early summer. Dipped into horror for a little bit. I did some horror games, and then one of the play tests came out. I want to say around the winter of that year.
For Dark and
Playtest,
Darker?
yeah, one of them.
Yeah,
It
the
was.
first public playtest was last
Mhm,
September. So we just hit the 1 year anniversary of the first
mhm,
public playtest, end of
yeah,
September. And you may have
mhm,
caught the second, or maybe even the third one. The second one was in October, and then the third
mhm,
one was December around Christmas. So it could have been October
yeah,
or
yeah.
December.
It was. I think it might have been the October one, and I caught like the end of it. And my
Hmm.
brother like actually introduced me to that. He was like, he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, there's this game. I think you'd like it. Maybe you can make videos about it because he knows I wanted like content and stuff."
Right.
And I'd been in this like limbo state for content. Like I said, like I love videos. I want to make videos. It's like I decided a long time ago that like I loved it and I wanted to do it. Now it's just a journey of like finding the game and finding something I'm passionate about.
Yep.
And first playtest, it was Dark and Darker. Like it was immediate. Like I played the game maybe one time and it was decided.
Yep.
It was decided for me. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean that's kind of how I got into it and like how I've been in it. You know, it's been a really long journey to get here, like
Oh,
to
it
where I
has.
am, you know, and it's like I've only been like really making videos for maybe like 4 months total ish
Wow.
between like Elden Ring and the horror stuff and then now Dark and Darker. Probably like 4 months total with like a bunch of breaks in between. But yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about and it's something I really love doing and I want to continue doing.
That is super cool. Yeah, so we're not too far off. I started this whole creator's journey in January of this year, and
Mm,
I've got you doubled up in terms of real life levels. So you're 23, I'm
mhm.
40, about to be 46, and I've never done
Sweet.
anything remotely resembling content creation, um, at least for anyone else to see, right? I did a little bit of like
Mhm.
graphic design stuff in school, multimedia production, but that was 20 years ago and I never used it. It was back
Mm,
when there was, Quark Express and early editions of Adobe Photoshop, which I mean
uh-huh.
is not even recognizable to what it is now. But I never did anything with it. And it was kind of the same epiphany for me where I just immediately latched onto the game. And when I didn't have a, another outlet for sharing it or evangelizing it. Like, of course, I tell all my buddies, everyone I know, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but we're in playtest mode.
Yeah.
So it's not like they can just go home and play it. You got to wait. It's like, I found the greatest
Mhm.
game of all time. Oh, cool. Where can I play it? Well, you can't. You got to wait. And then it's like, all right. So to kind of fill that void, it made sense to me to just start a YouTube channel because I'm
Yeah.
kind of in the same boat too, where it's like got a full time job, got family,
Mhm.
kids, so it's like I've got a premium on my free time. But if I could
Yep.
marry a hobbyist content creator um, gig, let's call it, and marry that with the game that I want to play the most and that I want to talk about all the time, and I want to find a
Yeah.
community of people that I can talk about that game with, then it just seemed to make sense. So,
Absolutely.
so yeah,
Mhm.
it's been a very, very cool ride. And fortunately, or unfortunately, I guess, early on, because of the nature of the playtest, and we had those gaps, those huge lulls of not getting to play. The positive side effect for that was you didn't have burnout, right? Like
Yeah.
it really got you hyped for each and every one. Like the amount of momentum that the game had going into each playtest was just unbelievable.
Mhm. For
It
sure. Yeah,
almost
I agree.
yeah, it was kind of
Mhm.
bizarre. Like a month after they went to EA, which was what, August 6th, something like that, early August.
Yep. Mhm.
Like when we hit early September, I woke up one morning and it was like one of the first times where it was like, oh, yep, I can still get on and play Dark and Darker. And I haven't really thought
Yeah.
about like
Oh, yeah.
the old days when I used to wake up wondering when am I going to get to play it again,
Mhm.
And
Yes.
yeah, there's a
Yes.
small part of me that kind of misses the hype that was around that, but
Mhm.
I'll don't get me wrong, I'll
Mhm.
definitely take what we have now versus
Yeah.
the old days.
For sure. Yeah, and that was, like, one of the things too, was, like, I'd finally found my game, right, after, like, searching and searching for, like, I was bouncing between so many games. I went to horror and I was playing, like, every horror game that was coming out,
What
right?
was the best one you
Just,
played?
like
Just out of curiosity, best
horror
horror
game,
game that you played.
It was called Boo Min. Boo Min. It's a very, very small horror game. It was, like, $5 on Steam,
Okay.
and it was basically, like, you were in a house and the house had like light switches and stuff, and you can only
Mhm.
have like 3 or 4 light switches on at a time, and the monster could like only travel through the dark, but the
Oh,
monsters were like pretty
interesting.
scary. It was really good. Yeah, I posted a video on it when it came out, I think that hit like 7,000-ish views, and I thought I was gonna be a booming content creator for like a week. And then, the nature of those small games is that, they have that little life cycle where it's like, "Oh, the next horror game came out, so this one's kinda dying now." So
Yeah.
but that was the best one, that was my favorite one. It was really scary. Like, I think I like, the title of the video was I screamed the loudest I've ever screamed in my life, and that was not an exaggeration, that was not a clickbaity title, like, I genuinely jumped out of my chair, and I didn't know I could scream. I didn't know my voice could produce that noise. Like I didn't know I could make a noise like that. So yeah, that game was really cool. I really liked that game.
Those moments are
Mhm,
awesome, especially when they're caught
mhm,
live on stream. They're
mhm.
really good.
Oh, geez. Yep. I was scared of the game editing it. Like I got jump scared while I was editing because I like forgot already.
Jeez.
You know, I was in the editing thing, and yeah, it was such a good jump scare. It got me.
The first couple times, and I'm
Mhm.
sure all new players to Dark and Darker get the jump scare from the mimic. That's pretty cool.
Mm. Mhm,
But
yeah, for sure.
the times where I've been the most like absolutely freaked out is when there's usually some kind of audio bug, or I'm casting a spell, especially if you're a warlock, where the
Mhm,
sound effect is so loud that you can't tell what else is going on. And you're in
mhm.
your own little world and you're concentrating while you're casting a spell. And unbeknownst to you, either a player or a skelly mummy, if you're turning around slowly, you're not like whipping around, right?
Yes.
Especially if you're
Mhm,
on low sense and you're just kind of
mhm.
gently panning, rotating around, and then there's something right in your face. Like some of those have produced massive jump scares for
Yeah,
me.
I think a like surprise barbarian roar out of Invis has gotta be up there, right?
That's up
Like, you
there.
you
Yep.
turn a corner and Invis barbarian just roars in your face, like,
Yep.
especially
That'll do it.
especially as a bard, like, that strikes the fear of God in me more than,
Yeah,
like,
that's a
anything else,
change
I
of
think.
pants right there for
Mhm.
sure.
Oh, for sure, yeah, and then I would also say, just the sound of plate boots coming down a hallway, especially if they're
Dude.
moving fast, because the faster
Yeah.
they're moving,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
stats they have stacked, right? So when you hear plate boots
Right.
like, psh, 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 like, you know they're coming, like, they
Yep.
are moving. They're
Especially when
probably
you hear
full
the
bard
bard
buffs.
playing like
Yeah,
six
yeah,
times the normal speed,
uh-huh.
then you're just like, oh, it's game over. I just
Oh,
need to
yeah,
hide. I need to hide. But
yeah,
then the bard can unhide
mhm.
you very quickly. So you
Oh,
just know you're
for
dead
yeah,
if you're
you
if
you
you're
hear pl you hear
solo.
pl you hear plate boots like, "Psh, psh, psh," like, I'm fine, but when they're moving, nah,
Yep.
it's terrifying. It's
Yep.
terrifying.
I'm with you on that.
Yes, sir.
So when you first played, what were the aspects of the game that immediately hooked you? What was it that drew
Mm,
you to it?
so I had never played an extraction game before. Like, I didn't come from Tarkov or
Okay.
anything where, like, gear, like, stayed through the game. So
Hmm.
the extraction aspect, because it had, like, that kinda novelty feeling for me, was really big. I think looking back, I probably would have liked Tarkov, right? Like, I probably would have liked any other extraction
Yeah.
game knowing how much I enjoy this one. But because it was so new to me and it was so fresh, I would say the extraction aspect of the game and, like, going into dungeons to get better gear, and also with gear, I would say building. Like, have you ever played any sort of like MOBA where you like,
Oh,
you're trying
sure.
to
Yeah.
stack
I
like
played
stacking
League. I
stats and
played
like
League for years,
yeah,
and
or
I was
like
a
even like
Warcraft 3 guy before
yeah,
that.
like Dead by Daylight, right? Where you're picking your perks and like what
Hmm.
just picking these different builds, right? My roommate loves it
Right.
a bit more than I do. He goes crazy on those things. But it's like genuinely just finding a stat that you think is cool, even if it's not like meta or it's like the best stat in the game, and stacking it and playing around with stuff and just
Right.
building these like weird, unexpected builds is another part of the game I like. So when you pair the extraction aspect of the game, like going into dungeons to get the better gear, and then coming out of the dungeon with the better gear and putting it into this set in your stash that you're just slowly maniacally scientist madman building in there. Like it's
Right.
definitely one of my favorite well, definitely one of my favorite parts of the game. And that's probably what immediately got me.
Yep. Yeah.
Mhm.
The answer for me is everything about that game. So I only played a little bit of
Mm,
Tarkov. I had a
mhm,
buddy that was a Tarkov freak. He played,
mhm.
and he's been a gamer for a long time. He played tons of Tarkov, more than any other game, and he tried to convince me to play it for years. And I just told him over and over, there's no shot. Number one, the
Mhm,
game looks savage. It's probably a little bit too hardcore for me to be
mhm.
able to compete. If it's that gear dependent to win
Yeah,
fights,
yeah.
like I was playing a lot of
Mhm,
Apex in my free time, and my son played Apex. So the
mhm.
one of the appeals of Apex for me was I could drop into a game anytime I wanted and know that I'm on equal footing with everybody else, except for skill, right? Like if I get beat, I
Yeah.
know that it's a skill issue. It's not
No, for sure.
because I'm out geared. And I played that for years, and he eventually convinced me to play Tarkov. Actually bought me a copy of it. That's how he got me to play it.
Awesome.
And when I jumped in there, I was shocked at how good the game was and how much I enjoyed it. The two main criticisms that I think are pretty common, number one, obviously the cheaters, but number two, for a new player, especially a guy that doesn't play a lot of realistic first person shooters, and I don't know that much about firearms, managing your inventory in Tarkov and trying to figure out what bullet goes with what gun and how to mod all your guns, it's like a freaking college course. It's insane how much effort it takes.
That learning curve.
It's so huge. So that was my only exposure. So I maybe had, I don't know, let's say 40 hours in Tarkov max, and they all came last year. And I kind of put it down and I went back to playing Apex. But when Dark and Darker came out and I kind of stumbled on it, I was just immediately hooked for all the reasons that you listed. Plus, I'm a huge fantasy genre nerd. So yeah, give me melee, first person melee combat that actually feels good.
Yes.
And I'm all in, man. Like,
yeah. And also I think another thing that hooked me too, shout out to the developers for being open and talking and communicative. Because you can't get that in games nowadays, right?
No.
You don't get devs this open. And I think a lot of the community, especially right now, when they patch some stuff and they maybe take away your +2 all, now your gear got re-rolled, you're a little upset. I think we take it for granted at times how open these devs are to us. You know, stuff like, you know, I've been a big, let's say, you know, Call of Duty fan for a long time. I played a lot of COD. They won't tell us sometimes when they nerf stuff or they change things or they make these big, they'll just change it and you don't know what's happening. You don't know what just, and they called it like a shadow nerf, right? Or like, you know, just stuff that they don't say or talk about.
And if they do put out patch notes, they usually don't say why, right? Like that's the other thing that I really appreciate is the SDF will usually put a paragraph at the end. You'll get the hot fix or patch notes. And at the end, there'll be a little summary of why they're making the decisions that they are. And I absolutely love it.
Oh yeah. Whether you agree with it or not, they're giving you the reason. Like they're telling you why they did it.
Yep.
And that's really cool. Yeah. That's the other aspect. You know, it's just, I love when the community is involved with the process, like, and in the know and in the knowledge. And like, we know what's going on behind the scenes. We know that they fought for us to get this game out, right? Like they fought for this like hard. So yeah.
They're still fighting. Yeah.
Still fighting. Yes. Yes, they are.
Lawsuit is ongoing. We should hear something soon. One Peg mentioned it earlier today, I think, that we're supposed to be right around the 2-month deadline for all of the evidence, I think all the discovery evidence to be reviewed in the Korean court case. So we should be hearing something soon, really soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the second this game goes back on Steam, man, it's going to be a whole new ball game. I cannot wait.
There's some stuff I'd like to see ironed out before we get there. You know, when we hit the massive fan base and we really get the Steam kids and everybody's jumping on, you know, I'd like to not be in buffball meta personally, you know, which we are kind of in, you know, and I think, you know, that's, you know, a little nitpicky to ask, right? But I'd say if there was one thing, I'd hope that we get out of buffball meta before we hit Steam.
They're taking steps really to reduce that now a little bit.
Absolutely. Yes.
We'll get to that said it shortly, but
they've said it in patch notes like twice that they're actively trying to address it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a few things they should tweak a little. I think if they build in a capability set of a block of code that's going to allow them to easily toggle between self-cast, maybe it already exists and they're just not using it that much, but self-cast versus others cast, and then just nerf. Like even if they said that all other casts of abilities that should really be like, let's take Invis. Wizard Invis, when cast on yourself, scales normally. But when cast on someone else, it's going to be based off of their buff duration stat. And it's going to max at 75% of whatever the wizard that cast it at has. You know, something to that effect. Just reduce it a little bit. They do that. They in this latest hotfix, they nerfed the barbarian magic resist a little bit, I saw. And they did a couple other things which we'll pull up here in a bit. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. I would like it. You can't take that entirely out of the game. You need, because then you kill the support classes.
Supports buff melee, right? Like, you know, it's there. Yeah.
Yep. But it shouldn't be game breaking, and it definitely has been that in the past.
Yeah, it's
sure.
such a thorn in their side, you can tell too, because they've said it like twice now. They want to annihilate it, but it's still there.
Yep.
And the player base is persistent. We are very persistent
Oh yeah,
on, you
no
know,
doubt.
finding what's strong. Very good at it.
Yep. Well, just the fact
Mhm,
that with the independent launcher and only being out for a couple months, they seem to
mhm.
be holding around 20,000 active players. Anytime I
Yes.
check, at least it's between 20 and 30. I've seen as low as
Mhm,
15 before, but that was in like off hours, you know.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so to maintain that player base
Yes.
without being on Steam is pretty good.
Mhm.
And the bulk of those people are
Yep.
all
Mhm.
diehard tryhards, man. Like
Yep, and
they're in
through the
it.
troubles and through the DDoSes and through everything that they, player base still there. Still
Yep.
there.
So
Mhm.
Bard is a recent evolution to the game, and it's crazy to I can barely remember the game without the Bard in it at this point. But it didn't come around until playtest 5.
Yeah.
What did you play before? I mean, you're known as the Bard guy now. What did you play
Mhm.
before you played Bard?
In playtest 5, I played Bard, but not as much as I played Rain. I did, like, play Bard with just the loot, right? You just had the loot songs, so, like, Peacemaking,
Right, right.
Chaotic Discord, I think is what it's
Yeah,
called. I
that
don't
was
remember
one
the
of them.
best song ever. But,
Yep.
yeah, I played Ranger. Ranger was my main in playtest 5.
Okay.
That
What about
was,
prior
I
to that?
think,
Were you just mainly Ranger?
I wanna say it was just Ranger. I did have a barbarian named Willy Wonker, I think,
Nice, nice.
that I played a lot. Yeah, I wonked willies. Yeah, I played a little bit of barbarian too, and recently with the bard nerfs, if I was to push, like, for high rollers, I don't know if my squad would let me play bard right now. So bard is, like, mostly a solo venture for me at the moment, but I am
Okay.
still a bard. I'm still a bard main. 1,000,000% still a bard main, for sure.
Okay.
Uh-huh. But my
What do
squad's
you
starting to phase me out of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, Bard is still super
Oh,
valuable. And
I
now
agree.
with chess being what they are, I guess you could argue
Mhm.
both sides. You could say
Yep.
because normal chess are so good, it's less valuable, but the good chess are really good.
Yep. And
Like
Wanderers is strong.
Wanderers is
Wanderers
strong,
is really
really
strong.
strong. You're popping
Mhm.
purples just nonstop on ruins right
Yeah.
now. I ran
Mhm.
2 raids as a cleric, 3 as a cleric, and 2 as a bard before we
Mhm.
hopped on here, and Wanderers seem to be paying off for me,
Oh,
especially when I was
absolutely.
popping open royal coffins,
Yeah.
man. Like
Yeah,
it's feeling good.
it was good before they just buffed all this loot that just got buffed, like loot just got a massive little boost, and just the few dungeons I ran was like insane. And to think like every time loot gets buffed, bard gets buffed. And I've been saying that, they've buffed chests various amounts of times. Every time chests get buffed or boss loot gets buffed, anytime loot gets buffed, bard gets buffed, because that is wanderer's luck and you are getting access to more gear frequently. And even just for like gold hoarding, or you know
Yeah.
I think that utility is like, there's nothing like it in the game. I mean, they're kind of trying, right, with luck potions
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
with the luck gear that you can craft with gold now, right? Like they're trying to kind of close that gap a little bit. But bard now with the luck potion and with the luck gear is just, again, like even stronger. And
Yep.
wanderer's luck, in my opinion, is probably one of the best perks in the game, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's great. I
Mhm.
hate taking it off. I very rarely, like if I'm running in a squad and I know that we're just straight up going to PvP, that's about the only time I remove that perk.
Yep.
But
Like
otherwise it's
some
always
kind of
on.
tourney or something, or just chasing kills, like the only time I'd ever take it off,
Right.
for sure.
So what
Mhm.
are you fond? What kind of build are you fond of running, or do you have multiple?
I am a crossbow connoisseur. I love the crossbow.
Mm-hmm.
I will usually even build towards my crossbow with a rapier and a buckler, and my tactic is to not let them get close, and if they get close, then I just kind of buckler stuff them. You ever
Okay.
buckler stuff somebody? You put a
Yeah.
buckler, like, in a barbarian's face,
Yeah. It
his
stops the
his
on the
yeah,
hilt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll hit the hilt, so that's kind of my
Yep.
strategy mostly with a lot of fights. I try to get a couple crossbow shots in, and
Yep.
then if I have to melee, I'm buckler stuffing kids. I have played with the reinforced instruments drum throwing. I have killed many people with the drums. They are very strong. I think that's going to be the next thing to go because they hate bards, so bards going to keep getting nerfed. The next thing to go is going to be drums. They're going to nerf drums. It's coming. I feel it. It's definitely
Just
on
the
its way.
damage on them, though, right? Just drum
Yeah.
damage when it's thrown. Like I don't think they're going to remove throwing altogether unless there's some other way to abuse it. But if they just nerf the damage on it, I think it'd be fine.
I think it's going to be a lot of maybe some modifier stuff, so it's not getting you can't stack the strength or the the fizz power when you're chunking.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But yeah, the damage is probably going to take a little hit. I think that's going to be the next thing to go. But I did watch the physical healing bard video from, was it Akira, I believe? I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name.
Maybe.
Akira. Yeah, he was playing with the physical healing with the ale. So basically,
Oh,
Jolly
I did
Time.
see that. Where
Yeah,
he's
that was
just
a
taking arrow
fantastic
shots.
video.
Like that ranger
Yeah,
shot him like, I don't know,
fantastic video.
40 times and he's just chugging beers. That was
So
hilarious.
I
That was really
I
good.
did give that one a little playthrough before ale just got nerfed as well. Another bard nerf.
Did it really? In this latest hotfix?
It used to cost 1 gold, now it costs 8.
What? For the lower end?
Yes, the lowest ale now costs 8 gold.
I mean, I know we inflated the economy, but that's that is a hefty price increase.
Another bard nerf.
Oh.
They
and
persist.
cleric, that's a cleric nerf too, man.
Yeah,
I used to love to run the drunken brewmaster.
Brewmaster, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I've played with that. I've played with the drum throwing, but I mainly just prefer to buff teammates, play in the back, shoot with the crossbow, and melee as a last possible resort. I try my best not to melee. I do run rapier mastery, so if I've got to fight, I'll fight. But I'm going to get as many crossbow bolts in you as I can before we get to that point.
With gear being what it is now, do you foresee rapier mastery becoming a little bit less desirable? Just like only getting 3 from that perk. If you're actually running greens and blues pretty much all the time, does it make more sense to pick up a different perk instead? I just feel like that doesn't scale that well, I think,
I think it's interesting now, especially that you have Warsong as well, right? Because Warsong, just
which they said they fixed for your teammates, right?
So I think when you stack both of them, I think it's going to be like a +8-ish, right? Like for like your attack power. I don't know what attack power means exactly, but you could run Warsong Rapier Mastery if you were really trying to use that rapier, right?
Right.
The falchion I tend to try to stay away from because it's like the easiest weapon to block in the game.
Super easy to block, and it's slow. Like Bard just doesn't have the strength to wield that thing quickly. I think it's probably agility, right? Is it strength or agility that determines your actual swing speed? It should be agility.
I want to say it's agility.
Yeah, but I always feel like on the Bard, for whatever reason, maybe it's just all in my head that I swing so much slower versus when I'm swinging that with a fighter.
And I am an arming sword fan, so
I love arming sword.
Good.
I love it.
Yeah, so that would definitely drop the rapier mastery. But yeah, I mean, I'd say charismatic performance is a crutch perk right now.
Yeah.
I was an advocate. I don't think any people got on the train with me. I was an advocate last patch when knowledge was really, really strong for making you play your songs faster. That because we're playing a lot of the 2-minute buffs, and the only things you really need, like pre-combat, were like Allegro Accelerando, you didn't have to run charismatic because you could just play the whole song. You weren't in a rush to play your songs almost ever. The only argument against that would be Shriek of Weakness. You want to get that off pretty fast.
Right.
But a lot of the time, in the later stages of the game, like getting all the buffs off, and then you could just time a Shriek of Weakness a little bit better. And I didn't think you needed to run charismatic performance. I was playing around without it, and it felt kind of the same, in the high rollers and in some of those dungeons. But it is now with knowledge not directly affecting your playing speed. You're right back to needing it. Having to skip a couple of your notes to play the songs a bit faster. It's right back there.
Yep. Yeah, I brought up who was I talking to earlier? Shoot, I can't remember if it was Odin or Dryfire Bulk. I think it was Odin. Odin and I were talking about playing on other servers and playing Bard on other servers where you have a higher latency, more lag. So
Mhm.
like playing in Brazil or Japan, where your ping might be upwards of 200 ms, right?
Yeah.
I felt like playing some of the songs was a little bit off, but again, this is one of those things, could have been a placebo effect. And my first thought was, oh, well, there's lag, and that's going to cause me to have to play notes a little bit earlier or a little bit later. It should be earlier.
Mhm.
Um, and his reply was, well, I don't think that should matter because I think all of that is captured on the client side of the game. So
Hmm.
immediately I was like, that is a very interesting point. So I need to
Yeah.
talk to someone more in the know or smarter than I am. I mean,
Mhm.
do you have any experience in just like
No, I've only ever played in an East
observational only East server?
or
Okay.
any, yeah, only East or West. I'm Central, so, you know.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been fine on both East and West, and even playing on Brazil servers, it's not that bad. I very rarely play on EU or out in Japan or OCE, but
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, I get you.
East still feels pretty good. I don't know what it is
Mhm.
about Shriek of Weakness, man, but I know that song. I played it so many times, and somehow I'll feel like I'll watch the note hit, and then it doesn't pop. The
Yeah.
the last note. If I
Mhm.
skip the first note, which everybody does, and I hit
Mhm.
2 and it's perfect, and I hit 3 and it looks perfect, but then there's nothing there. I don't know if that's a
Yep.
bug. I don't know if it's a skill issue,
Mhm.
but there's so
Yeah.
many times where I play that song and it looks like it's right, and then nothing happens.
Yep. So you've been playing some Bard yourself? Been playing the
Yeah,
songs?
I've got 2, I've got a level 17 or 18 and a level 15 bard, I think.
Nice.
So, yeah, I've been playing them. They're the easiest at least prior to this hot fix for me, they were the easiest to farm with. That and
Yeah.
fighter. Like I
Wanderers,
refuse to
man.
play rogue and I refuse to play barbarian. So, unless I'm experimenting for like a video or something like that, if I'm
Oh,
doing something
mhm,
content creation
for
related.
sure.
But yeah, all my
Yeah.
farming is done basically with the fighter and my bards. Bards obviously
Mhm.
because they can unlock, and fighter just for the survivability perspective, like just
Mhm.
being able to actually 2v1 or 1v2, I guess, because I don't like Goblin Caves that much. I feel like Ruins is much
Not
better
either.
risk reward proposition.
Mhm.
Like the loot is just
Yes.
so much better there. So if I can run
Mhm.
around in PvE and then take the fights that I want to take or just avoid fights altogether, I feel like that's pretty easy to do as a fighter.
Yes.
And a bard, it's
Mhm.
not that bad because you're so mobile.
Mhm. Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, my real favorite class is cleric, but solo cleric. I mean, I got a lot of flack for saying this
Mhm.
yesterday on Darkest Hour. I was saying that cleric needs they need just a little extra, I think. Nothing crazy. I wouldn't even call it a buff, just more options spell wise that would
Mhm.
hopefully allow them to disengage from combat
I get
because you
you.
have no
Yeah.
way. And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be anything extreme. Like I'm not asking for cleric to be everything. Like
Yeah.
I hate it when people
Mhm.
feel like their class should be able to do every single thing in the game. Like that's
Yes.
not what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying. But
Mhm.
cleric is tough when you get caught in a 2v1 situation on ruins and you got a ranger and a fighter, a ranger and a warlock running at you. It's like, well, I can block one of them and the other one's going to take me
Mhm.
down.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So I am in like the firm corner right now. If you asked me to make a tier list with all the classes, I think cleric is an S tier by itself. Personally, like I really do believe cleric is in a class of its own. I don't think any of the other classes would even be put in the same tier as cleric right now. Like
dang.
personally, I I do have a friend who disagree, and we argued for like an hour this morning about it. But I just think that it's right now. I think cleric is better fighter. I think cleric is the best like PVE class in the game.
Hmm.
Right. I think
Yep.
the heal utility is really strong, even more so after they nerfed all the physical healing stuff like bandages and potions, right?
Right. Yep.
The healing mechanic is so crucial to the game right now.
Hmm.
As well as protection, bless, cleanse for bosses, right? Like a cleric just has access to, I mean, arguably the best utility in the game. Holy Strike is doing ridiculous amounts of damage at times. The sustain is ridiculous. The physical damage reduction is back in the meta right now, which greatly
Yeah.
benefits cleric.
Yeah, sure.
Barbarian is able to deal crazy damage, which benefits cleric, right? Coral of Clarity is really strong with bard, so you can get spells back if you're running a bard with cleric, right? I
Yep.
think cleric has Earthquake is arguably one of the strongest spells in the game.
Arguably, yeah.
Earthquake, yeah, arguably. Like I would say, for me again, personally, definitely top 5 in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Yep.
I
No,
think,
I would agree
I
with
think,
that.
yeah. So I hadn't even, I just mentioned a bunch of things I think cleric's really good at, and I hadn't even mentioned Earthquake yet. And
Yeah.
Earthquake is like probably one of the strongest things in this kit. I was really hoping Cleric was gonna get nuked this patch. Sorry, I know you said you like Cleric. I was really hoping for a Cleric nuke this patch.
I would be okay if they reduce the damage a little bit on Earthquake, because I do think it's a little
Mhm,
excessive. I feel like
mhm,
it should be used more for crowd control than it should be just to knock people over and kill them.
mhm. Yeah.
Locust
When
Swarm is dog shit
Mhm.
right now. It
Yes, yeah,
needs
yeah,
it
yeah.
needs a little love.
Mhm,
Everything else in our existing kit is
mhm,
good. Now,
mhm,
for a support class like Cleric, who's actually pretty good solo, I probably shouldn't be asking for what I'm asking for, right? Like something that allows me to get away,
mhm.
because I'm
Yeah.
volunteering to put myself in a 1v2 or 1v3 situation when I'm playing Ruins or Crypts. But
Mhm.
it does feel bad when I'm looting a room, I turn around, a door just opened. I'm
Yeah,
not getting away because I can't open a
yeah,
door to escape. I'm
yeah.
not faster than anybody in the room.
Roar Barbarian, you're not getting away, right? Sprint
I'm not
Fighter, you're
getting away
not
from
getting away.
anyone.
Yeah, Ranger's gonna shoot you, right? Wizard's gonna
Yeah,
fireball.
I'm not
Yeah,
getting away. Period.
yeah.
Warlocks are freaking
Mhm,
fast, although they didn't nerf their
mhm.
boots. But yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
like literally
I get
every
you.
class can run me down and I can't open doors. So
Yeah,
like the
resourcefulness.
and I have no range. So
Yeah.
if
Mhm,
I don't have high knowledge, then my what are my
mhm.
options to CC one of two people?
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I can try to
Yeah.
holy strike, and maybe if they're like clumped together, I can either earthquake
Mhm.
or I can holy strike, but I can't get them both.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mhm,
it's just the disengage aspect, just something that gives me a small chance. I'll take a 5% chance that
mhm.
I can disengage. Great.
Yeah.
Then
Mhm,
yeah, give me that.
yeah. There's a certain meta that you kinda dip into when physical damage reduction becomes so strong, because the heals are flat heals, right? You're getting this health back regardless. So when you're taking less total damage,
Right.
but
It's
you're still
huge
healing, like you're
for
still healing like this
yeah, it's
flat
huge.
health back.
Yep.
Mhm. Because like that's what, as long as physical damage reduction is like the meta, the heals are gonna feel way stronger than they might actually be,
Right.
because you're taking less damage but healing the same,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, and with this latest patch, I think that's the route I'm going to have to go. I'm not going to sit and wait around for some kind of disengage option. It's
Mhm.
now that gear is so prevalent, just build heavier, build more PDR, and don't worry about running, and just go straight, take the fight to them,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
try to pop away. If I'm taking too much damage, then try to create some
Yeah.
space to get one heal off in the middle of a
Yeah.
fight, and then maybe I'm good.
Mhm. Yeah, but I think cleric's another one of those classes too. Like getting into it in the beginning, it's a simple class, and
Yeah,
you're hitting, you just got to hit your heals, and you got to buff your friends if you're playing trios or whatever. But the higher you kind of get into it, and you have to time between when do I want to fight, when do I want to heal, when do I got to
right.
switch weapons, when am I going to this, right? Who am I focusing on? Who's getting the protection? Who's getting the bless, right?
Yep.
Do I need to cleanse somebody who just got curse of pain by a warlock, right? Like do I need to be cleansing them to possibly save their life and prevent the warlock from healing, right? Like when
Right.
do you need to do those things? It becomes one of the higher skill intensive classes towards the
Yeah,
top end, which
no
is
doubt.
very unique with cleric, and I really like that aspect
I
of
love
cleric.
it. Yeah, 100% agree with that.
Mhm,
Yep.
mhm. Yes, sir.
So cleric, bard, both feel pretty good to me right now.
Mhm.
Warlock,
Yep.
I have not tried the warlock in the last 2 hours, so I don't know how much the magical healing
I've
nerf affected them. But I
I've heard
feel
bad
like,
things.
did they overcorrect? Is too much?
So I think the attribute ratio basically got cut in half, which if I'm not mistaken means that one magic healing does like half. So two magic healing I think now does one magic healing.
Okay.
But if I'm not mistaken, they also took like two and three magic healing out of the game. as one of
Oh,
those attribute ratio things. I
yeah,
haven't
you do
seen
one of those
+2.
things and not
Yeah.
both. You do one,
Yeah,
not both.
yeah, I think +2 is out of the game. It could still be in there. I did not see
Jeez.
it, when I was looking around. My friend said
It
it's
could be
+2.
kind of like all attributes where
Mhm,
they just put it on certain pieces, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, my friend said all his +2 magic stuff got rerolled. So I'm assuming right now, I could be completely wrong, but
Hmm.
it might be out of the game too. And even so, even if that's not the case and it's still in the game, the half ratio thing is still, pretty tough.
Right.
And, um also making everything cost more, right? Because the cost is health, right? That's what you're spending when it
Yeah.
says like it increased the cost. I don't play Warlock, so I'm not, but when so all the cost of like everything went up to the Hydra, and that
Hmm.
just now you're draining more health, but you're not healing, which also probably just has to feel
Yeah.
kind of bad, right? Like it's gotta
Right.
feel like a little
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll dial that back a little bit. I do understand. Well, I think I understand what is part of the goal, which is to get them to actually be more viable as a spell sword, right? Like that
Mhm.
class can use really good edged weapons for a
Mhm.
reason. And the meta since the Warlock updates has just been straight caster. Like almost no
Yeah.
one is actually using their blade unless
Yep, yep, yep.
they're using Blow of Corruption. And
Mhm.
then they don't even need a blade, right? They'll just use their staff
Yeah.
and bonk you with the staff and Blow of Corruption. You're
Mhm.
freaking dead.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they're going to throw a Hydra down. They're going to hit you with a Curse of Pain with crazy magic healing.
Mhm.
They'll tank all the damage. And they'll just run up to you and bonk you, and
Mhm.
it's game over. So
Yes, sir.
some of these tweaks hopefully are trying to influence people to play more of that hybrid spell sword type of
Mhm.
class. But
Yeah.
yeah, based on what you said, man, that sounds like way too much nerfing.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds like they just did not feel like magic healing was in a good place, right?
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. And they've got the data, right? They're looking at the data. Maybe they look at the data and say, hey, when a warlock has this much magic healing on, they win the fight this percentage of the time. So like, hey, we know we gotta do something. I feel like that's probably how they do a lot of their
Yeah.
nerfs. So like I trust that they made a good decision, but time will tell. And they like to do this thing where they walk it back
Oh, yeah.
on
Yep.
occasion. They like to walk stuff back. So we'll see. We'll see if it was too much,
Yep.
you know.
How do you
Mhm,
feel about the
mhm.
removal of the level 1 to 14 queues?
I think it's a good idea. Personally, I think it's gonna be okay. If you're a player who's been really avoiding those 15 plus level dungeons, I think you're gonna be all right. We're gonna see like the mash, everyone's gonna be in the same lobbies now. And that, while on the one hand, it increases your chances to see geared players who have access to the trader, there were non-geared players going into the 15 plus dungeons too, right? Let's
Oh,
not pretend
absolutely.
like,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
it didn't
so
prevent that much abuse. Well,
yeah,
it made abuse a
mhm,
little bit more difficult. It definitely
yeah,
reduced it,
hmm,
but I'm with you. So I was a big advocate for them to improve the new player experience, right?
hmm,
Then I saw kind of the impact that it had to the lobbies, and I realized everyone was constantly re-rolling characters. I was one of those people because I've got friends
hmm,
that are much more casual players. They're still getting
yes,
introduced to the game. I want to be able to play with them, so I'm definitely not going to bring them into the plus 15 lobbies.
yeah,
And then I just saw other people were going 1 through 14 just to gear up and to get gold. And then once they turn 15, they transfer all their gold to another character and then re-roll them again because it was
yeah,
easier to mine. It was easier
hmm,
to acquire gold in the ruins for sure.
yeah,
So that part of it I felt like was a drawback.
hmm,
I
yeah,
still think that was a net win for the new players. But
hmm,
now the reason I think this works, two main reasons. Number one is that the loot is so good that a new player can find greens and blues so
hmm,
quickly in
yep,
raid. Like the first raid you ever play, you could have a halfway decent kit on, so
hmm,
that if you do fight someone else, chances are they've got a cobbled together set. Or if they are a
hmm,
juicer, the gear disparity, the gap is not so huge that you're out. Right. Like if
yeah,
you run
for
into a
sure,
streamer team, you run into Jay or
hmm,
Spuddy, like you're
yeah,
dead. You're probably
hmm,
dead anyway.
oh
But
yeah,
now that everyone's back together, the whole player base is back together, your odds of running into those people are
hmm.
less.
Yes.
overall, right?
For
Well,
sure. For
not
sure.
necessarily less, but they're
Yeah.
low. They're still relatively low, right? They were
Yeah.
zero-ish before,
Yeah. Yes.
but
Now you're going against all the people who were under 15 anyway. And then
mhm.
the people who were above 15 but still going naked are also in these lobbies, right?
Right,
Like you
right.
do now have a chance to hit, these crazy geared streamer teams, right? And there's not as many of those as people like to say there are,
No,
right?
no.
There's not as many of those, right? If you jump into a high roller right now, you're gonna find one because
Yeah.
they're the only people in high rollers. But you go into normals, there is a abundance of players right now. We're not lacking for dungeon time. We're not waiting 5 minutes for lobbies. It's almost instant for
Right.
me every time, right? It's
Yeah.
instant. There is a good amount of players in the game, and
Yep.
you're gonna have dungeons where you get giga dunked by juicers, right? Like it's going
Right.
to happen, and that's part of the game. Like that's
Yep.
the cycle of the game.
Yep.
They're doing their thing. They got their gear. You might see them one dungeon, perhaps you see it twice in a row, but it's not going to be every dungeon.
Right.
There's no world where you're hitting a absolute BIS squad every single dungeon
Right.
because those don't exist in that quantity that some people like to say that they do,
Yep.
you know. So I think it'll actually be a genuine beneficial change. And another reason I think it's a good thing, when we wiped, we did not get rid of levels.
Yep.
Levels stayed. So the absolute like pure casual people who have been struggling to level up maybe are getting levels on their classes anyway. Like they're
Mhm.
getting, hopefully, they're getting to that point where they would be hitting these 15 plus dungeons
Right.
regardless, right? Like
Right.
anyway. And I think like thinking long term, when the player count maybe hits Steam and we're seeing like some really strong numbers, I think the fix for me would be an extremely friendly, like super casual experience of a PvE only reduced loot dungeon. Right. But I think that's something you can only really see in like when the game's doing numbers, right? Like, because I think a lot of people would. I just think that would help. I think a PvE only, like it's just you and your squad with reduced loot. Obviously, you can't go in there and grab purples and stuff. Just so people can learn the game, maybe for your very first dungeon. The first dungeon you ever run is PvE only. It's just
See,
you.
I would be down for that if it's limited use, right? Like what
Mhm.
you're saying,
Yep.
basically a practice mode. Either,
Mhm.
and I think SDF did address that. I thought he said at one point that he was not considering making a
Mhm.
PvE
Yes.
only
Yeah.
mode.
Yep. Yep.
The only way that I'd get on board that train is if it was in the way that you described it. If it was
Mhm.
limited use, I mean, shoot, you could even say one raid per day. Like if you wanted that to be your warm up raid, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I want to
Mhm.
pay, I get one ticket per day into the PVE only dungeon, but I would say that you can't extract with anything, honestly. Like
Yeah. That's another.
maybe
Yeah. No
maybe
extraction.
just gold and you're
Mhm.
capped. Like
Yeah.
it's just not that good, or you're
Yeah.
capped at
And
taking out 100 gold, right? Like that's just
yeah.
gonna be a
And
little
the
seed
other
money to get
side
you started.
is in the dev Q&A, they mentioned the idea of like a training ground or something
Yes,
like that.
yes,
That he
that
said
I
that
like.
that's the other side. I think
That
I'd
is,
prefer that. I'd
yeah,
prefer a training ground.
yep,
But if people are really dying to get into dungeons like with no players, I think it could be a level 1 thing, you know,
yep,
possibly, you
yep,
know.
yeah. I'm with you there.
For
Good
sure.
call. So, speaking of potential for the future in terms of features, capabilities, content in general, what are you looking
Mhm.
forward to the most that's already on the roadmap?
Oh, something on the roadmap? I think
Yep.
the combining of the dungeons where they
Mm-hmm.
said like you'll be at the maybe in the ruins to start, and then you go down to crypts, and then you go down to the inferno, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think I really like the idea of the triple dungeon stack. I
Yep.
don't know how on base I am with re-queuing every time you go
I
through
yeah.
that,
So
you know.
when they match make and fill up each
Mhm.
level, that
Yeah.
is, yeah, that's been a kind of hot topic of
Mhm.
discussion on the podcast.
Yes.
And yesterday we were talking about this. The way that I read it initially, I'm hoping was wrong. SDF basically said we want to make it so that you can easily skip down to the floor you want to be at, and I
I
took
did
that
see that.
as meaning that it's going to be like level select. But Ken, I
Yeah.
think, correctly pointed out that
Mhm.
what he probably meant was there are going to be static extracts that are readily available and will open fairly early. So if you start on ruins, then there's going to be multiple static extracts that open like 3 minutes into the raid or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, that's
where
what
you
I took it as too.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking as well.
That doesn't sound too bad. In fact, I think that solves a lot of problems, honestly.
Yeah. And
for
then
the new players especially.
if you rematch into the crypts, I think that's okay. But I
Not
do
not
not
Inferno.
like a world. Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
a world where I'm going into Inferno with like five teams.
Right.
I don't know if that's the Inferno experience, right?
Well,
There, 'cause
what is it now though? So there's only
3 or 4 possible total.
three
Like
sets
3,
of
I
red
think.
portals, right? So it's a
I think it's
max of
3.
9 that go in there.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Max
I
of
think so.
9. So if they kept to that, to where you have a max of 3 squads that are going into
Yeah.
Inferno, I think that's
Yeah.
cool. That's
problem
totally
would,
fine.
the problem would be if they rematch made into like the 15s. You start getting up there past
Yeah,
those, like,
I don't think they'll
total
do
health
that.
portals.
That would be
Yeah, I
bonkers
would
unless
hope
they
not. I
increase
would
the
hope
map
not.
size radically.
Mhm.
But yeah, like the
Yeah.
idea that you're going to go risk the biscuit with the lobby
Mhm.
size the same as Crypts, that would be
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. But yeah, as long as they keep it to like 3 teams, I think. But I think that's like the thing on the roadmap that I'm looking most forward to is
Mhm.
being able to go like ruins. If you want to grab some of the craftable stuff, you can just grab that craftable stuff, take a blue out, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
if you're trying to get the crypts, you want to go for some of the some of the the chests in there, there's a lot more loot. You want to go ruins, get stuff, and then rush crypt, and then go crypt, get your stuff, and then possibly go Inferno, right? I think that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah.
These long, maybe drawn out sessions, right? Like you can be 10 minutes in ruins, go down 10 minutes in crypts, go down 10 minutes in Inferno, right? Like I think
Yeah.
I really like the idea of
Me
like
too.
super classes, and the addition of stuff like Warlock just got finished. I don't want to talk the next classes as far as additional content goes, because I'd like to see Warlock continue to get finished. I know if you watched it was the Ryan 6 days a week video where he did the data mining video.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
that they so kindly allowed him to do, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's more summons for Warlock. Warlock has more than just Hydra. Like
Right.
that's on the way, which is
Yep.
terrifying.
Yeah.
In one
And
aspect
awesome. Yep.
is terrifying and awesome. Yeah. I think that there's enough on that front. And they said they wanted to start Druid as soon as Warlock was finished. I don't even think we have to
Right.
do it that soon. I don't think we have to do it that soon. I think we have a lot to work out right now. But I'd say I'm most excited for the Paladin class if I had to look forward and pick one of them.
Yeah.
The idea of a massive mountain of a character that probably does not a lot of damage, but can eat just momentous amounts of damage. Like that's probably what I'm most excited for.
Yeah, and he should be. I mean, Cleric is kind of the anti-Warlock right now, the counter to the Warlock class, but the Paladin would really be the counter to the Warlock class. That would be sweet. Because you would assume they're going to have holy magic, right? Like that's got to be staple.
Let me think.
Yeah,
what
I'm
else
with
is
you.
there on the
What about
roadmap?
maps?
What
You saw the
maps?
screenshot
Yeah.
that SDF put on there, right? SDF put a screenshot
Oh,
of
I
one
did.
of the
I
new
do. I
maps
do.
they're working on.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was kind of like
What'd you think?
icy, right? Right?
It looked like a little bit of snow. It was super dark. It looked like it was outdoors or in a massive cavern, something. But yeah, it had like a lot of green and blue tints to it, but still obviously dark. But it looked like it would be a significantly different terrain.
Yeah, I think that stuff is really cool. I mean, I think the little magic monsters that shoot the missiles on ruins look like they belong there a little bit more, right? The little ice crystal things. They look like they belong in that spot a little better. But I'm all for maps, because I think with that is going to come a lot more craftable stuff too. And I am so into the craftable stuff right now. Like I am loving grinding for these little craftables and stuff. And that makes me so excited for the next. Like I forgot about this. I'm so glad I remembered. Quests. Yes, quests. Super, super excited for that. Absolutely.
Same. Yeah,
What did
there's
they
a
mention?
lot to be excited about, man. A
Yeah.
lot.
They mentioned something with the quests that they kind of knew what the first quest was going to be. I think it
Yeah, I
related to
think
the dash.
SDF, yeah,
Right?
he said that he had at least one queued up.
Hmm.
And it's tough, you know,
Cool.
because English is not his first language, so you always take all those responses
Mhm.
with a grain of salt and like, was that supposed to be plural or singular?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. For
it's
sure.
hopefully not going to be too long before we find out. He made it sound to me like it's possible we could get a content patch later this month and maybe it'll have
Mhm.
quests in it. So
Yep.
I'm almost certain, barring any complications in the courtroom,
Yep.
almost certain we're going to get that by Thanksgiving.
Oh,
And
yeah.
who knows what's going to
Absolutely.
happen before Christmas. Like
Mhm.
there's just so much
Mhm.
coming.
And what were your thoughts on they talked about the training or like the skill tree little area? They mentioned that.
That was one of the few negatives
Mhm.
for me, and it
Yeah,
was
they
so negative that it kind of ruined the whole Q&A. Like I was
Yeah.
more negative about that Q&A than any other one they've had.
Yeah, because they mentioned that we're playing with the final version of perks right now. That scared
No.
me. That scared
Yes.
me.
Yes.
That was pretty scary.
But
Mhm.
now that they've done what they've done in this hot fix,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, if the loot is always going to be that good, where I can just go in and pull greens and blues to the point where level 1, raid 1, if I go into ruins, I'm having to go through my inventory and drop items that are green that I don't like in
Mhm.
that first raid, then maybe the perks aren't going to feel as important. Now,
Yep.
they may need to rework quite a few if they're going to keep this
Mhm.
quantity and quality of gear out there.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed too, man. I was hoping for more
Mm. Ex
subclassing oriented
expansion.
variants. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. I think it's a really good opportunity if that's the route they're gonna go though, to make, like, the really good perks be the final version, but some of the perks that aren't getting used a lot could maybe be the beginning version, and this is your chance to add in a buff to the perks that are, like, not being used,
Right.
right? So, like, say a perk is already, like, one of the best perks in the game. Let's take Wanderer's
On
Luck, for example, because we
yeah,
mentioned
wow.
it earlier, right?
Right.
Let's say, like, Wanderer's Luck at 100 is, like, the final version of it, but, like, what's a perk that, like, never gets used? Like,
A perk
um
for Bard that never gets used. I don't know. Like
mhm.
I feel like all the Bard perks are actually
Yeah,
pretty legit. There's only
yeah,
one or two that I can't even think of right now that I don't use.
yeah,
But
but
a skill that
just
doesn't get
yeah,
used would for
the
me would
just
be Encore.
yeah,
Encore I never
Encore is
freaking
awful,
use.
right?
Yeah.
So let's say, like, Encore was maybe, like, the beginning of right, so, like, they take that opportunity to buff the bad perks and, like,
Yeah.
make the good perks, like, the final version. I think they
Yeah.
could do a lot of balancing with that, that could maybe go over well if that's the route they really wanna go, but that's kinda the only positive I can get out of it.
Yeah.
Really, it's, like, the only positive thing I could maybe pull.
Yep. So we've got a
Mhm.
tournament coming up for
Yes,
content
sir.
creators, the Troubadour
Mhm.
tournament, the first official Dark and Darker
Really
tournament.
cool.
Iron
Really
Mace is
cool.
partnered with Madrinas Coffee. We have
Mhm.
the preliminary round coming up October 13th and 14th. So not this
Yep.
weekend, but the following. Do
Yes,
you
sir.
have a squad?
Yes, I do. I do have a
Nice.
squad.
Nice.
Yeah, it is my roommate, PP McGee. I don't know if
Okay.
you've
I've
ever
heard that
seen
name.
him. Yeah,
I've
yeah,
heard it.
PP
Yep.
McGee. He is a cleric main. He's playing cleric.
Okay.
And then we just partnered with somebody in the Troubadour looking for game, Vomav or
Okay.
Brian.
Yeah.
Yep, he is
What's
playing
he gonna run?
Barberry.
Okay, so you're
Barbarian.
gonna have
Yeah.
Bard, Cleric, Barb,
Yes.
Cleric. Wow.
Yep. Bard Cleric. That is
Yep.
going to be the squad. We're trying. Everybody's going through it right now, right? It's not just us. So I'm not going to complain about it. But all the sets that we have been building are dead skis. They're they just got re-rolled, and now
Right.
we're back at square one. Everyone's back at square one, so I'm not going to complain about it.
Right.
But now we're back to the grind,
Yep.
getting some sets and stuff. Hmm.
Very
So
cool. I'm looking
yep,
forward
yep.
to it. I think the format that they chose is okay. It seems
Hmm.
like the way I read it that you're gonna have the whole weekend to line up your games anytime you want. Like the only restriction I saw was that you needed to play 5 in a row. They all need to be HR.
Hmm.
Right? That was pretty much it. And you got well, you have to have them
Yeah,
recorded.
has to be
Obviously,
streamed. Yeah,
streamed. But
for sure.
yeah,
Yep.
I was kind of hoping they would put private lobbies out and let us actually go head to head. That's
Would be
definitely
cool.
more preferable. But
You think that's what the top 16 will be?
man, that would be sweet.
That would be really, really
That
cool.
would be huge.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, I
I
wonder if
can't
they would just open up. So if they don't have the capability, the tech in place to do private lobbies, part of me thinks
Mhm,
that if they wanted to just spin up a new region,
mhm.
right, depending on
Yeah.
who makes that final 16, they might be able to say, okay, geographically, here's where all the players are, and we could drop a VM in AWS in this location and give
Mhm.
everybody about 100 ping, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe they do it that way and make that region only
Mhm.
available to those folks. That would
Yeah.
be one way
'Cause
to do that.
right now, this might be a weird analogy. Right now, in like the content, like these good streamer squad space, we're in a spot right now where it's very reminiscent of early Fortnite content creation. I know this might be the weirdest analogy, but people would like wait for like Ninja and Myth to get into the same lobby and they'd be in their chats like, oh my, you're in so and so's
Yeah,
lobby, like
yeah,
you're in
yeah.
so and so's lobby. That's
Yep.
like where we are right now in Dark and Darker at
Right.
times, where you're like, oh, you're in Jay's lobby, you're in
Right.
Rico's lobby, right? And like you're like, and
Yep.
like it gets to we're at that space right now.
We
And
definitely
when
are.
they eventually kind of switch and then Fortnite started hosting their own tournaments and they brought everybody together, it was the coolest stuff. So
Hell yeah.
once
Yep.
we get there, and we will get there, like even if it's not this tournament, maybe the next,
Yeah, it's
next,
coming.
it will be there. Like it will
Yep.
be there. And that will be such a cool moment for the community.
They just need to figure out how to scale. It's the hardest thing for any business to do. Iron Mace is still
Mhm,
30 people or less working out of that dojo. SDF
mhm,
said in the Q&A, they have no more physical space to jam bodies
yep.
into that place.
Yeah,
And
which is a wild thought. Just
I
a
know.
wild thought.
And I'm guessing they're probably not going to make any significant moves till the lawsuit plays out or
Mhm,
they get a much better
mhm.
sense for how it's going to play out.
Yeah.
So for right now, I think, and this is more for me than it is anybody else, we all have to just temper our expectations, right? And just stick
Yeah.
with what they're telling us and not get our hopes up for too much too quick. Because I feel like they
Mhm.
already do a lot. Like their release schedule is crazy.
Yep.
They've had 15 hot fixes in 2
Yes.
months
Yep.
and a content patch for a
Yeah.
30-person dev team. I mean, let's be
Huge.
realistic,
Huge stuff.
people. It's crazy good
Yeah.
what they're
And
giving
when
us.
and when you hear them say they're literally like back to back, wall to wall in
Yeah.
the studio they're developing the game in, like
Right.
how can you just not get a little respect, right? Like
Right.
these guys are,
Right.
putting that work in. They're literally lining the entire studio that they're working out of. They have no space to add people. That's a crazy thought to think
Yeah,
about, right? Like
it is.
if that doesn't tell you they're working really hard to provide the best experience for us, then I don't know what does.
Right.
Right.
Amen to that.
Mhm.
That is a perfect place to end the conversation, man. An hour and 8 minutes has flown
Yes,
by
sir. Oh,
already.
absolutely.
So tell the people
Mhm.
here as we wrap up where they can find you. I know you stream on Twitch a little bit. You've
Yeah.
got a good YouTube
Mhm.
channel. Tell them where they can find you.
Mhm. Yeah, YouTube is, SwornRandom. I recently just changed it to random. I think you can still find me by both. But yeah, SwornRandom, Bard stuff coming for sure, but I'm about to take a little dip more into what I call utility content.
Okay.
In my next video, which I'm recording either later tonight or tomorrow night, is going to be a tier list ranking of all 87 perks in the game with a couple of my sweaty friends. So
Oh,
we are
damn.
going to be taking a look at all 87 perks and we're going to be putting them in a big tier list. And that's going to be super fun. We're going to be debating against each
Nice.
other. It's going to be lots of discussion, maybe some arguments, but it's going to be a great time.
Hell yeah.
Yes,
I'm looking
sir.
forward to it, man. For the folks at home, I will have links to Mr. Random's YouTube page and his Twitch stream in the description below. Been a blast, brother. I really
Oh,
appreciate
for sure.
hanging out and
Yeah.
definitely look forward to getting some more raids in the
Mhm.
future and
Oh,
seeing
more
what you have in
dungeons.
store content wise.
More dungeons. Yes, sir. Been a
All
fun one.
right. Thanks, everybody. Hold the
Yes,
line.
sir.
Have a good one. We'll see you next time.